How could you be a black man voting for Trump?
Because I'm not led by the nose. I think for myself.
You think for yourself?
The white man doesn't think for me. The black man doesn't think for me. I don't need Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, and the rest of those clowns.
So Trump ain't a clown?
No, Trump is not a clown.
He's a straight house.
I think it's condescending to assume that because I'm a black man, I'm supposed to vote for a Democrat. Whether it's coming from the media telling me to do it, or from a politician telling me to do it, or even from another black person to tell me to do it. You can't, on one hand, say that you're against slavery, but then on the other hand, tell me how to vote, what to wear, how to speak, you know what I mean, how to live my life, because black people are supposed to do these things. They're supposed to vote this way. They're supposed to talk this way. They're supposed to walk this way. They're supposed to believe a certain thing, because that's slavery. You can't say that you're against slavery, but then put me in a box and tell me that this is how I have to perform.
You called me a nigger. You called me. Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
You did.
No, I didn't.
But you can say that. That's just constitutional right. You know anything about the Constitution?
House nigga. I didn't call you a nigger.
Oh, okay. That's a big difference.
You're Uncle Tom.
Oh, is that my Uncle Tom? Yeah.
To call somebody an Uncle Tom is completely idiotic. Because if you've read Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, you'll see that Uncle Tom was actually a very good person. He did a lot of good things. He sacrificed on behalf of other slaves who were on the plantation.
In many ways, there's a lot of dramatic irony at play with being called an Uncle Tom.
When you use the term Uncle Tom to demean someone, being ignorant, not knowing the history of what Uncle Tom means, you're literally just signifying the fact that you yourself are ignorant.
After educating myself on the story of Uncle Tom and learning about Josiah Henson, he was a completely good person, completely opposite of what the black community thinks Uncle Tom is.
Uncle Tom was the hero. He was the hero.
He was self-sacrificing. And ultimately, he paid the ultimate sacrifice for not ratting out the other slaves that had escaped.
Uncle Tom was the hero of Harriet Beecher Stowe's novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, and nobody knows that, so they call us Uncle Toms to hurt us. And every time I get called, I just go, oof, you should read the book.
A lot of black conservatives have kind of flipped the narrative on Uncle Tom. I mean, we embrace it. We say, yeah, that's me.
I'll get into debates with people. They'll call me an Uncle Tom, and I'll say, thank you, I appreciate the compliment.
It should be a badge of honor. I wear it as a badge of honor. I like to tell people I'm a proud Uncle Tom.
This whole scenario is indicative of the problem with the black community. The man who's trying to save the black community is demonized, and the one who's damaging and destroying the black community, a lot of people don't even know him. They don't even know the demon in their own communities. But the one who's helping them, they want to throw you away.
What they're actually meaning to call someone is a Sambo, which Sambo was the one who was always telling on the other slaves and telling the master where the slaves were hiding. He wanted to see the slaves get caught and the master triumph.
Sambo was who they refer to as Uncle Tom, and then they just switch it to Sambo. They don't stop and think to say, well, man, all these years I've been saying, wow, I have been kind of brainwashed to a bit to see it this way, and they don't see that. They just completely move Uncle Tom aside and bring in Sambo, and now you're Sambo.
You can't depend on a government school to teach you raw history.
You're going to see people like even Frederick Douglass become less and less and less celebrated and less and less and less popular because he doesn't really fit the narrative. He was a Republican, very American.
When they want to teach you somebody that was great in Black American history and they happen to be Republican, they don't tell you that element. And they also, and this is sort of one of the biggest myths that they tell you, that the party's completely switched.
Did you know the Democrats are the real racist party? And did you know that the Republican Party freed the slaves?
Democrats, in order to conceal the racist past of their party, now say, well, the party's switched.
Because a lot of people like to skip over the fact that when it comes to race relations, historically, Republicans and Democrats switched positions. Yeah, Republicans were basically Democrats, and the Democrats were basically Republicans. It's like that movie Face Off.
Look at all the Democrats that voted against the Civil Rights Bill in the House and in the Senate. How many of them switched from the Democrat to the Republican Party? Answer one. Strom Thurmond.
Strom Thurmond was among the most racist politicians of his generation. And in the 60s, He switched to being a Republican because he felt more welcome. So now that we know all of this, we can see why it's nonsense.
So their entire case rests on one guy, Senator Strom Thurmond.
And now he started his career in the 1930s as a Democrat, and he was a huge racist. In fact, he was so racist, it was almost funny.
There's not enough troops in the army to force the Southern people to break down segregation and admit the Negro race into our theaters, into our swimming pools, into our homes, and into our churches.
I came to the United States Senate, a 29-year-old fella, and turns out one of my closest friends ends up being Strom Thurmond. Strom told me, he said, Joe, if there has to be a Democrat as president, it might as well be you. And after I dropped out of the race, he came to me and said, don't worry about it. He said, you got a good 30 years left to try.
Al Gore Sr. died a Democrat. George Wallace died a Democrat. These racist Southern sheriffs and senators and governors, they died Democrats.
My used to be pizza. But if I came to you today and said, hey, would you like some pizza? You'd be like, no, that. And I'd be like, if you knew your history, you'd know that this is a pepperoni slice. It doesn't make sense.
They have to say the party switch. They have to. Because they can't acknowledge that they are part of all of the worst things that have ever happened to black people in history. And if you know better and you know the parties didn't switch and you just look at today, they're still a part of every negative thing that have happened to black people in America.